For many, this was undisputed proof the prison system is in crisis. Riots breaking out at HMP Bedford in November. A month later, spreading to Birmingham. Hundreds of prisoners were involved in the disturbances. They followed repeated warnings about low staffing levels. Finally, the government seems to be waking up. It aims to recruit 2,500 extra officers. To help, staff at 31 prisons in the South East will see their pay rise by up to £5,000 thanks to a £12 million cash injection. At HMP Thameside in South East London, inmates had some ideas of their own about how to improve the system.
Definitely more staff, a lot more staff than what is been proposed. And I think that will make a huge difference. You know, it's not going to actually clean up the streets of crime, but I think it will make a massive difference to like the way people are processed through and progress through the system as well. Yeah, definitely.
I know the government are notoriously bad for employing people when they leave prison. Probably the first thing it says on an application form is, do you have a criminal record? And then you probably won't even get past the first stage of an interview. So something like that needs to be addressed. And we definitely need to give ex-offenders a chance, especially having been here now for 2 years. Unfortunately, I've seen a lot of young people have come back already, some even twice. And even that, for me, is a very, very difficult thing to see.
In this Serco-run jail, prisoners are learning printing skills to help cut reoffending and improve their job prospects. No wonder it was the location chosen by Justice Secretary Liz Truss to announce her new initiative.
We are doing a huge amount of practical things. We're investing in 2,500 prison officers across the prison estate. That will mean that we have one officer for every 6 offenders, helping them and encouraging them to turn their lives around. We're also dealing with the issues of drugs, drones and phones. But it is incredibly important that we all agree the purpose of our prisons is, of course, about punishing people who have done wrong, but it is also about reforming people, and that's never been agreed before. And what this will also do is give the prison inspector new teeth. So he is able to say if a prison is succeeding at that or if it's failing. And if it's failing, the Secretary of State, i.e. me, will have to act. And that is really important. That's the first time the prison inspector will have those teeth.
You mentioned there 2,500 extra prison officers. Now that's replacing half of the total that have been lost since 2010. Is that an admission that the last government went too far in cuts to prisons?
Well, things have changed over the last 6 years. We've got a higher proportion of people in prison for violent crime, sex crime and drug supply. We've also got different prisons, so we've got more digital prisons.
So should those cuts have been made? Did they go too far?
Well, what I think we faced at the time was an increase in psychoactive substances, an increase in phones and drones. And we don't have, and I've been clear about that, we don't have enough staff to be able to deal with those challenges. So what I'm doing is I'm putting those new staff in, but we're also making sure those staff are deployed in the right way. Because what's important is we have people on the wings who are there, who are fully trained up, who are skilled, who can encourage those people to turn their lives around.
Now, part of your announcement as well is more money for some prison officers. Now, at the same time, there was nearly 6,500 assaults in prisons last year. The head of the Prison Office Union warned that it was a bloodbath. Is a bit of extra money really going to help recruit more people to what is a very difficult profession?
It is tough for prison officers, and I go around prisons around the country. They are fantastic people who are in the job for all the right reasons. And that's why I want to make sure they're properly rewarded for the work they do, that they've got good training and progression. So we're creating new jobs in the service as well at a higher level in the organisation, so people can earn more money for specific skills like the ability to deal with mental health issues, for example. But what we're particularly doing is in areas like London and the South East, giving a pay boost for new recruits. So you'll be able to join on a starting salary of about £30,000 if you join the prison service. Now, of course, it's a tough environment to recruit in. I recognise that. We're not going to turn our prison round in weeks or months. It takes time to train people, bring new people on.
It's been a difficult time recently for prisons. We've had riots that were the worst in decades. Suicides are at a record number. Assaults in prison are at a record number. Is the prison system in a crisis?
We're in a very difficult situation. I have absolutely said that that is true. But I don't believe the Council of Despair, the people around that are saying this can't be solved, it can't be worked out. We've got some fantastic examples of good things that are happening in our prison. Here at HMP Thameside, we've got a great print workshop. We can see people are learning. They're going to get the skills they need to do jobs on the outside. What we need to do is make sure that's happening across our system. That's why we need a much better framework to make the purpose of prison clear, that as well as being about punishment, it's also about reform. And that's why we need those officers.
There's clearly good examples of what's happening in prisons, but at the same time there are also some pretty worrying examples as well. When you have prison officers walking out because they say that they feel unsafe, that sounds like a crisis, doesn't it?
It is a very difficult situation we're in. What we're announcing today is additional funding for those prison officers. We're announcing new positions for more senior prison officers. I want to see a professionalised prison service where people have good career development, good training. All of those things takes time, but we're moving in the right direction.
The UK locks people up at a higher rate than any other country in Western Europe. It's the simple fact that we're actually just incarcerating too many people.
Well, if you compare us internationally, we lock up far fewer people than the US, we lock up fewer people than Australia, so we're roughly mid-table in terms of the number of people we lock up. And over the last 6 years, the prison population has remained stable at about 85,000. What's actually happening is we're locking up more people for crimes like sex crime, and we're prosecuting more people for those crimes. And we're actually locking fewer people up for crimes like shoplifting. So over the last 6 years, we locked up 3,000 more sex offenders, but the overall prison population didn't go up. And I think it's right that the sentences for sex offending has gone up by 50%.
So you're comfortable then with the amount of people we lock up?
I think the fact is that in the 80s and 90s, we were not putting people in jail for long enough for serious sex crimes, for issues like child abuse, and we weren't prosecuting enough people. Too often, the victims were on trial rather than the perpetrators. That has now changed. We've seen a 140% increase in the amount of sex criminals we're prosecuting and bringing to justice. That has consequences for our jail population. Over time, I want to see us reduce reoffending, so we're not having the same people going in and out of our jails. I want to see us intervene earlier to stop these horrible crimes being committed. But I do think that if somebody has committed a serious crime, and we know that 3/5 of the people in our jails have committed serious sexual, violent or drug supply offences, then yes, we should be putting them in jail. And I do not support the idea that we're going to solve the problems in our prisons simply by letting those people out early into society. We need to solve the problem by reforming those people while they're in our prisons so they don't commit those crimes again. And that is absolutely doable and it's absolutely possible.
So your predecessor, Michael Gove, said it's an inconvenient truth that we send too many people to prison. You're saying that he's wrong.
I'm not saying he's wrong at all. What I'm saying is the best way to send fewer people to prison is to make sure that while people are in prison, they're doing things that are productive, they're doing things that will help turn their lives around, so they're less likely to reoffend. We're seeing fewer people going into prison for the first time, which is a big success, but our reoffending rates are sky high, so that they're going in and out of the system, and that is the problem that I'm seeking to address. But what I'm saying is there is no quick fix to this. We can't just suddenly let out those sexual offenders or violent offenders early. I think that would be the wrong approach. Instead, we have to make sure our prisons are focused on reforming them so we don't have those people going back into prison.
The big legal story that came into your intro so far, of course, was when the Supreme Court decided that Parliament should have a say over Article 50. Now, you were criticised for not backing the judges strongly enough and quickly enough when they received the storm of attacks in the media and from elsewhere on social media as well. If you went back, would you have acted a bit quicker to support the justices?
Well, I have consistently stood up for the judiciary.
It took you 48 hours to say anything, though, didn't it?
I'd already made statements before that. My swearing in as Lord Chancellor, I made clear about my belief in the rule of law and how vital it is. But I do think it's very dangerous if politicians start commenting on newspaper headlines and telling the press what it's acceptable to print or what it's acceptable not to print. My job as Lord Chancellor is to uphold the rule of law and uphold the independence of the judiciary. These are traditions and institutions that have been going for over 1,000 years. And I think it's wrong to suggest that a few newspaper headlines are the problem.
Well, even when the President of the Supreme Court says that politicians could have been quicker and clearer in the defence.
Well, what I say about the President of the Supreme Court is he's a great individual. I think the Supreme Court came out very well from the increased public scrutiny that it received. And it was good for people to understand how the Supreme Court operates, what the role of the judiciary is. And it's good that he is going out there and explaining the role of the judiciary, because I think too many people in our country don't understand what judges do, what the role of the judiciary is in the Constitution, which is we've got a sovereign parliament, but their role is interpreting the law. And I think it's really important that in the modern age, when more of us are under scrutiny, whether you're a captain of industry or a politician or a judge, that judges themselves are out there explaining what they do. I think that's really positive.
You've been quite passionate in your defence there of the kind of justice system. So how does it make you feel to see the man in the White House attacking some of the legal decisions that have been made?
Well, I think what we're seeing in the US is, again, a very robust constitution that has separation of powers, and we're seeing, the judges involved in that, the president involved in that, and we're
Does
seeing.
Does it make you uncomfortable, Donald Trump's attacks on the legal system?
I think we're seeing a constitution in action, and what is being shown there is the limits of presidential power and the fact that they do have a strong independent judiciary in the US.
It almost feels as though with every day that goes by of Donald Trump's presidency, that decision by the UK to kind of cosy up to him, to befriend him, is looking increasingly risky.
I completely disagree with that. These are our most important international allies. Of course we should work with the US. Of course we should.
So you're comfortable then to see us going over there, inviting him to have a state visit, inviting him to meet the Queen? You don't think there's risks to that?
Absolutely, and the US is vital. Our partnership with the US, and in fact Europe's partnership with the US, is vital for our economy. It's also vital for our security, and I think the Prime Minister's work in securing that agreement on NATO was really, really important. There are big issues, there are big threats in the world that we face at the moment, and it's important that countries work together. Of course, we don't agree with everything that happens in the US, as actually we don't agree with most, a lot of things that don't happen in other countries, but that doesn't mean that we shouldn't work together. Of course it doesn't.